Hello, and welcome to another episode of Information Return Intelligence. My name is Jason Dynason, and today we're talking about electronic filing issues, e-filing as it relates to information returns. We have several things to talk about today, including the fire system going away, a few updates to Iris, and some Form 1042 things to talk about. So let's get started. By now, you probably are familiar with the e-file threshold for information forms. If you're a filer of information forms, which would be 1099s, 1042s, W-2s, hopefully you're familiar with this because it changed 2 years ago now. The IRS continues to list it under what's new in the forms, but it really isn't, quote, new. It was new several years ago. So the new regulations, actually, it's the new law. The law, it's a 2019 law from Congress that says if a taxpayer files 10 or more information forms, they must e-file all of those forms. And that's based on your EIN, however many forms that EIN is filing. So, what is an information form? It's your W-2s, all types of 1099s, anything else that would fall under the 1090 series, a 1095. You might have to file a 1095B or 1095C. Well, usually the C would be probably issued by your insurance company, but not always. Anyway, anything in that series, the 1090s, 1098s of any type, Form 1042S, and Form 8300. Form 8300 is a form you have to file if you take in cash, like cash receipts, over a certain dollar amount in any one transaction. When you add all of those together, if you get to 10 or more, you have to e-file all of those files or those forms. And the tricky thing, as we'll talk about in a little bit, is these forms, you count them all together, but they go to different places. And sometimes there's confusion too about how W-2s play in on all of this. A question someone asked one time was, how can the IRS require e-filing of W-2s when those go to the Social Security Administration, SSA? And the answer to that is that it's not the IRS. People, they'll say things like that, well, how can the IRS do that? Well, it's not always the IRS. Sometimes it's the law. And that's the case here. There's a law called the Taxpayer First Act of 2019 that sets the e-file threshold, and W-2s are included under that umbrella of information forms. So the IRS maintains two systems for 1099s and 1042S, and also anything else in the 1090 series. You have FIRE, which is the older system, the legacy system. FIRE stands for Filing Information Returns Electronically. That's existed for decades. And then the IRS rolled out Iris a few years ago, 2022, I think it was, Information Return Intake System. And when that happened, we knew that FIRE's days were numbered, but we didn't know when. Well, now we know tentatively when the end date to FIRE is. The IRS has said in writing several times, December of 2026, so a year from now, is when FIRE will go dark. Now, some of us in the 1099 world, we expect that the IRS might kick the can down the road on that as that date gets closer. But for now, what we have in writing from the IRS is December of 2026 is it for fire. Now that seems like, okay, we've got a full year to figure this out. And you do, that's true. But what does December of 2026 really mean when we say the end date to fire? It means that it will literally be taken offline a year from now, which means this coming filing season, your 2025 forms that you'll be filing in a few weeks, if you use Fire, this is the last year you could use Fire because it's literally going to be pulled offline in December of 2026, and Iris will be all that there is. Now we should keep watching that, and of course we will keep watching that because the IRS might say, you know what, we're not quite prepared for this yet, so it'll be December of 2027 instead. That could happen. But I would say if you use Fire, you should start planning for a transition to Iris or a third party provider because the end is coming for Fire. December of 2026 is what the IRS says now. Even if they push that back a little bit, I don't think the IRS is going to completely say, okay, let's forget about this. We'll keep Fire online. So, what are your options for electronic filing? You have two choices. One is you or your organization can have logins to Iris or Fire yourself, and you can use those systems, and that's free. But the hard part is getting a login. And by the way, people ask if I have any words of wisdom on getting logins. The answer to that is no, not really. Everybody complains about the login process. You also have to have a transmitter code, a TCC code. And if you've been using Fire and you have a TCC code, you have to apply for a new one from Iris. But that's free. Now, you do have to then learn how these systems work and file formats and things like that. You've got to figure all of that out yourself, but it's free. Or you can partner with a vendor, and the vendor themselves has the connection to Iris or Fire, or probably both, and you're interacting with their system or their software. Some of them have software, some of them it's an online platform that you use. Either way, you're interfacing with whatever they have, and then they take care of the file formats and all of that, getting it sent off to the IRS for e-filing. And of course, there's a fee associated with that. The flip side, though, is that you don't have to figure out how to deal with Iris and Fire yourself when using a vendor. I will tell you, for all the years that I've been doing this in the information reporting world, I've never had a login to Fire or Iris. I've thought about it, that maybe I should for teaching purposes, but I have always partnered with a vendor. I partner with Avalara and recommend them. I've used Avalara for 1099 filing since they were called track1099.com. Way back in like 2012, I started using them. And when I was practicing, I used them for e-filing my own company's 1099s and all of my clients. I always used Avalara, or back then track1099.com. I never dealt with it myself because the fee that you pay is actually quite reasonable. And, you don't have to then deal with Iris or Fire. But if you want to do that, and some businesses do have the login themselves, that is free. But you do have to test the system and make sure that the file format is right and all that. So, one of the limitations of Iris, I know there's several limitations that people have brought up. One of those limitations is that in prior years you could not file Form 1042S on Iris. That has changed for 2025. They have updated the system. You can e-file the 1042S. We're still left with the 100 form limitation. So you can't upload more than 100 forms at a time, which means that if you have 1,000 forms to file, you'll have to do 10 batches of 100. I've heard talk, in fact, some insiders that I've talked to have said that Iris will be changed to accept up to 250 in one batch. But all of the documentation from the IRS that I've seen as of mid-November still says 100. Now, here's another problem that we don't have a solution for yet. We don't know what the IRS's response is going to be on this. If you have international reporting, Form 1042S, Iris now accepts 1042S, and that's great. However, there's a summary form called a Form 1042 that you have to file, and that does not use Iris or Fire. There's a different network called MEF, Modernized e-file, is the system that the 1042 is accepted under. MEF is the same system where, like, your personal tax return goes to when it's e-filed. And not every vendor is set up on MEF yet. So we'll see if the IRS gives some kind of special dispensation, an exception for 2025 reporting where maybe you can mail in the 1042. Still, the 1042 is considered an information form that's subject to e-filing, but it doesn't use Iris or Fire. Now, someone asked one time, can I have a login to MEF? The answer is technically yes. Well, let's back up. The answer is yes. The problem is that MEF in particular requires very specific file formats, and unless you are a computer programmer, you might find that MEF is not usable. So, can you use MEF? Yes, but is the best answer to that. All right, that'll do it for Information Return Intelligence, the fast-moving podcast that we do every week where we talk about various issues with 1099s and 1042Ss, W-9s, and so forth. I'm Jason Dynison. Join us again next time.